Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast. Our primary objective is to motivate and inspire our listeners to never quit. The reality of life is simple. We all fall. We all fail. At times, we get knocked down. The question is, do we get back up? Are we stronger? Are we better prepared to attain the maximum of our potential? Thank you for joining our No Quit tribe. As you go for your greatness today, never quit. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. Welcome to episode number 257 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is the power of positivity. Our quote of the day comes to us from Willie Nelson. Once you replace negative thoughts with positive ones, you'll start having positive results. Today's guest happens to be one of my personal accountabilities as well as a very good friend. Chris Wilberding is all about spreading positivity and inspiring other people along the way. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Chris, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
It's great to be here and join you today.
Appreciate it. So the first question I ask everybody is, are you ready to positive impact at least one person today?
At least one. I think I've accomplished that already today, Chris, so let's go assist others.
Let's go above and beyond.
That's right.
So as you know, the number one objective of our show is to both motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. I was curious if you yourself have either a no-quit story or a challenging time that tested you where you could have given up or given in, but you didn't.
Yeah, Chris, if I said no, that'd be a lie. I've had several throughout my life, but I think the one I want to focus on for today is it was a time when I was about 19 years old as a freshman at the University of Dayton, and I thought I was going to be the next John Wooden. I wanted to be a college basketball coach. I wanted to be a head coach in the biggest, highest level I could. So my freshman year, a little bit naive, I walked in, applied for the manager's job because I was not good enough to play basketball for the Flyers. And I didn't get the job, and I was crushed. It was everything I wanted to do my freshman year, and it set me back. But the silver lining at the end of it all was, unfortunately, that head coach was fired, and that entire staff, including the managers, was not brought back for the new person. So fast forward 12 months, due to my resilience and persistence and a little nudge from my father, I went back in to the new staff on their first day in the office and presented myself, my resume, and told them that I would like to be the head manager for the Dayton Flyers basketball team. And shortly thereafter, it happened. So I was excited. It's assisted me in my entire professional career, my personal life. But it was a big moment where I was pretty distraught that I didn't get that opportunity, that I went back in and got it done, so to speak.
How was the competition the following year?
How was the competition for managers?
Yes, sir.
I was the first one in, so I think I was their number one choice. They ended up hiring, back then you didn't have 15 managers on a college basketball staff like they do today. We had 2. And there were about 8 people that applied, and they had funding for 2 of us. And myself and the other guy, we did everything we had to do to assist the Flyers. And that year, we actually went to the NCAA tournament. So it was a fantastic outcome.
That's awesome. How did you guys do that year in the tournament?
We made it to the round of 32. In the first round, we upset Illinois. It was the year after they had gone to the Final Four. And then we got beat by 2 by Arkansas. And from going to the Sweet 16, we got beat by 2. So it was an extremely high moment, but it was also one of those that we were so close it hurt a little bit more than it should have.
Well, I appreciate you touching on that. I think the best part about the story for me is it's the fact that you went back and you tried it again, and obviously you had no idea what the outcome would be. So I think that's the biggest thing we talk a lot about on the show is the importance of being persistent, having consistency, but just going and getting after it. And the reality is nobody knows the outcome of things like that. But if you don't do it, the reality, very simple, was you never would have been the manager if you didn't at least try it.
Yeah, I didn't want any regrets, right? That's what I was looking for. I didn't want to look back in 5 years when I was still trying to be a college basketball coach and hadn't gone after that opportunity.
So if you wouldn't mind, just tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today.
Yeah, so thank you. Again, Chris Wilberding. I reside in the suburbs of Chicago. From 9 to 5, I am a vice president and general manager for a company called 2U, where we help individuals achieve their personal and professional goals through online education. What I do post 5 o'clock is my last 3 years of my life. I've committed to being a outstanding or best as I can be husband and father, but also pushing positivity out in the masses of social media to negate and mute the negativity that seems to be bombarding our world at all times.
So, got to touch on that last piece. It's of great importance, especially dealing with what we are not only in the country but the world right now with this coronavirus. So, I believe you had said that it was probably around 2016, 2017 when you really made a decision, and that decision, to be very black and white, is you decided to just spread out as much positivity as you can. So I guess the first question I have is what got you to do that? And then secondly, what keeps you doing that?
So what drove me to that was the nightly news. I didn't really have, so first of all, the nightly news was difficult to watch. I still don't watch the 6:30 news. It's sensationalism to me and often puts people on edge, and I don't need any of that in my life. So my own personal development took me away from the news, but then I started trying to come up with a social media strategy because I was a scroller. I was just looking at what was going on with everyone else. And I realized that so many people were going to social media with negative connotations of their life, bad things going on. And I said, you know what? My life's pretty good, all things considered. And I started searching for quotes. I started searching for videos that I could share. And I've been doing that since 2016. And I'll tell you, Chris, I've been feeding my brain positivity ever since then. And it was personal at first, but now I can't tell you how many people reach out to me on a weekly basis and say, thank you for that quote. Thank you for that picture. Thank you for your words. Especially during this heightened time that we're living in right now.
Yeah, I think it's amazing some of the things that have been spread over social media. And I think one of the things that you and I have had multiple conversations on is this idea of muting negativity. And the only way you can do that is one of two reasons. One, you could just completely get off of social media altogether, which I don't think people really want to do. And the second one is just really spreading more positivity. And I think what people don't fully understand, and I'm in no way an expert, but there are algorithms based into all social media platforms. So whether it's LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, in regards to the type of things that you yourself share, like, comment on, and the things that you post as well, and the things that you post, how they get responded to, and or their own likes and shares as well. So I think it's something that's interesting when, especially in this day and age where we are today, where we're going through the coronavirus. I myself have just been super focused on connecting with those people that inspire me and motivate me, such as yourself. And I think we have the ability as a country and as mankind to really spread more of this positivity. So I wanted to get your perspective on this, in the sense of who are those people, whether they're famous or not, that you're following that are really inspiring in you and motivating you on a daily basis?
Yeah, so I follow a ton of famous people. The Rock, Will Smith. They're putting out great content. I really like Will Smith because he gives the humor and the entertainment side, but he also gives life perspective. I would recommend everybody follows No Quit Living on social media. Chris does a tremendous job, not just pumping him up. He and I actually connected because of social media, and that's how we've gotten to know each other so well. There have been two people recently that I've really begun to follow just out of being introduced to them, but one of them is Morgana Eisenberg, and she's a mother who's gone through some very difficult times, and she's paying it forward with kindness through Positivity Rocks or Kindness Rocks, and it's amazing to see the impact one person can have in a short period of time. So follow her, and then Jeff Forrester, who I believe was a guest or is going to be a guest on the show. He is pumping out some really thoughtful and inspirational social media posts, faith-based perspective, which is strong and needed at this time, but also just some professional development tools that are helpful for people. And I'll throw one other one out there, and I was introduced to him actually by Jeff, is Tim Douglas. And Tim Douglas inspires. He's a person that I've been following probably for a few months, and really enjoy I think his topic yesterday was actually resiliency during these difficult times, and that resonated very strongly with me.
Yeah, I follow all those people as well, and Morgana has an unbelievable story, and she's doing some amazing things with her rocks and painting amazingly positive messages and utilizing the hashtag #DoItForJack. So I appreciate that you mentioned that, and we did have Jeff on as well as Tim, and with all those, including The Rock and Will Smith, and I really appreciate the kind words you said about the stuff that we do. We really take a lot of pride and thought into what we put out there. But I think the reality of that is social media, there's a hugely positive perspective to it if you find it, and if you're willing to really make sure that it's there and you spread it and you post it and you follow it. And I just commend you for doing what you're doing. I think it's awesome, and wanted to kind of follow up that with you, as you and I have had many conversations on a lot of different things that we're working on and we're putting forth. And I believe you have 4 keys to personal clarity that you've been developing over the last few years. Probably your entire post-college career has probably impacted a little bit. But I think what you've shared with me, I wonder if you wouldn't mind just touching on it for a couple minutes, because I think it's so important, especially what we're dealing with during this coronavirus.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. Thanks for the opportunity. And you're right. It's something it's probably been on my mind for quite some time, but it just resonates a lot during this unprecedented time we're dealing with now. Those four steps or 4 keys to personal clarity. The first is take a deep breath. And what I mean by that is allow yourself in your mind to become clear and your breathing to become deep so you can become calm. The second piece of that is appreciate the moments of silence. In our busy world, we sometimes need that silence to focus. And then begin the process of expressing gratitude, reflecting on the good in your life, just to center yourself, right? Big meditation, yoga word. That's the first key. The second is embrace the pace. Life has slowed down right now, and busyness can no longer be worn as a badge of honor. Busyness, as quoted by Matthew Kelly, a Christian author, business is the enemy, right? We actually believe that being busier is a good thing. It actually creates anxiety and creates stress in our life that we can, by embracing the slower pace of life today, we can come up with new routines and allow ourselves to be prepared for the new normal, whatever that new normal is on the other side. The third key would be focus on what's important now. During this time, for me, it's been about my health. It's been about my family. It's been for many people, you see it on social media, you see it on the news. Love your neighbors, love your community, take care of your country, right? Take care of each other. Work on your mindset. Do you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? But what's important now to help you get through these times? And it's all underneath the premise, Chris, of a hashtag that we've been using a lot, is we rise by lifting others up, right? That's what's important now, is how can we, pay it forward? How can we help our neighbor? We can take it back to love your neighbor as yourself, right? If you want to go back to that perspective. Then the last thing at the end of all this is just be positive. So that fourth key to personal clarity would be positive. We've all survived our worst days, and we're going to get through these as well. Adopt that abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. And then I think John Gordon says it really well. Wake up every morning with a get-to-do attitude versus a have-to-do attitude. So again, those 4 keys, Chris: take a deep breath, embrace the pace, focus on what's important now, and then be positive.
I think those are four amazing things that, again, not only are they important at all times of life, but especially dealing with what we're going through now. I think it's so important. And I'm glad you touched on that hashtag. A lot of our listeners know that we utilize that hashtag because for the last month or two, we end every podcast saying, and remember that we rise by lifting others up. And I think it's cliche in some ways of how it sounds, but the reality is every single person can lift one person up every single day. And think about the amazingly positive impact that would have not only on our community, but our country, but in the world as well. And we're going through these very difficult times, and we need more positivity. And John Gordon, who you mentioned, is a buddy of mine, and obviously we both follow him and we've read a lot of his work. he doesn't talk about this Pollyanna positivity where everything is perfect and wonderful. It's the perspective of making the best out of any situation. So we're all dealing with this social distancing, whether you have kids or grandkids, they're being homeschooled, whether you work or you're not working. You are not working in your office unless you're a doctor or a nurse. You're working from home. We're all dealing with this. And the importance is, how do we take advantage of this, and how do we come out of this a better version of ourselves? And I wanted to jump into something you said. If you could just really quickly break down something you said, which is a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset, and just give us a quick definition in your words, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll give them to you in my words. So a fixed mindset is somebody who believes they've achieved and learned everything they can, right? They have reached a point where they no longer are trying to attract or embrace new learnings. They're not trying to grow. That's the fixed side of it. The growth mindset is what I think is lifelong learning, right? We never stop improving. We need to focus on being a better version of ourselves every single day. And that growth mindset only gets developed and nurtured by continuing to read and learn and exhibit positivity. It's the growth mindset will allow you to do many more and better things than you ever imagined, versus having a fixed mindset where you're stagnant and not growing.
I love that you touched on the book perspective and reading. You were kind enough to share a podcast with me in the last few days of John Gordon when he had Buzz Williams, who was the head coach of Texas A&M basketball program, and he talked about how he still to this day at 47 reads a book a week, and he feels that is the best way to gain wisdom. And then what he further followed it up with, then he shares that wisdom with his team, with his coaches, with his family, friends. And I think the value that we miss some ways with social media and with audiobooks and YouTube and things like that is there's just a difference, and there's a ton of science behind it in regards to sitting down and actually reading a physical hard book as opposed to getting a snippet here and there. So want to follow up that question with if there's anything that you're currently reading or something you've read recently that you'd like to recommend to our listeners.
Yeah, so I don't quite read a book a week like some folks. That's an amazing accomplishment. But I have upped my game quite a bit in the last 18 months to 2 years. The two books that I've recently finished, The Seed by John Gordon on how to find purpose in your life, is really fantastic. John's books are fables. They're written from a sense that you can reread multiple times to get to the nuggets that are left there. And the other one that continues to resonate with me is Dream Managers by Matthew Kelly. I mentioned him a little bit ago. That book is one that I would recommend to others. The one I'm dusting off right now that I just pulled off the shelf yesterday is I'm rereading a book for the first time ever. I'm going to read The 1 Minute Manager again by Ken Blanchard. I have not read that book in 10 years. So I'll be very interested to see my perspective at 10 years later to see how that impacts what's going on in my life today.
You touched on something that is pretty interesting, and I have to be transparent. I am a avid, voracious reader myself, but it wasn't until about a year and a half ago when I really understood the importance of rereading a book. And what I mean by that is what I've found is that every time you read a book, you get something different out of it. Something resonates a little different. And right now, I'm actually rereading the book, The No Complaining Rule by John Gordon. And ironically, you had said Ken Blanchard, he writes the foreword for this book. But what I'm realizing is as I'm reading this book again the second time, you get different things. And I think that's something that so many of my guests have shared is the importance of going back. And, every book doesn't need to be reread, and there are probably some books you love and some books, didn't have a huge impact. But what I realize is that so many people, professional, whether it's in the sports world, business world, entrepreneurial world, in the non-for-profit, they have these 5, 10, 15 books that they'll go back to over a 5, 10, 15-year period and say, hey, I was having a tough time in this area, or I really wanted to figure out more about sales or more about relationships. So I'm really glad you touched on that. I wanted to ask you this question. If you had to define yourself, but you could only use one word, what word would you pick?
I'll combine 2 words: eternally optimistic. That'll stump people at spelling bees across the country, but I have an innate ability to leave negative thoughts in the past. I don't know where that comes from, but I was just sharing with a friend of mine yesterday that I don't remember bad stuff that happened to me. I don't remember the kids crying all night when they were newborns. I don't remember the negative things. And I think it has to do with pumping positivity into my mind. And but I've always been an optimist since a very young age. And I wake up every morning still believing at almost 50 years of age that I can change the world. Right. So that if that's not an eternal optimist, Chris, I don't know what is.
Eternally optimistic. ETERNALLYOPTIMISTIC. And
that's a word.
And nobody can see that. I'm actually reading it off of my phone because I am not a wonderful speller. So as you know, we talk about quite often the word accountability, and I was just wanted to get your perspective or your definition on what accountability means to you.
It's been a long road, Chris, that I've learned what accountability is. I've been very good in my career professionally to hold other people accountable, but I often lack that in my own life. And until I would say the last 6 to 12 months, I've really struggled with what accountability means. And I think accountability is everything. It's being accountable in every aspect of your life. And got a couple of accountability partners that I rely on every Wednesday morning from 8 a.m. Central Time to 9 a.m. Central Time to just walk through and hold each other accountable for what happened in the past week and what we're going to focus on going forward. That's been a game changer for me. I'll share something that's I still think it's a little corny. I like to exercise. I don't see it as punishment for what I ate. It's a celebration of what I can do. And I'm stealing that from Christoph Lewis on his social media site the other day. But my wife and I gifted ourselves Apple Watches a couple weeks ago, probably end of March. And having that hold me accountable for my workouts, it's like having a personal trainer that shows me what I've done, what I need to do. And it's made it very simple for me. And I really appreciate just technology and how I've been able to embrace it from that perspective. This is a guy who, 3 days a week was the norm. Now it's 7 days a week, and I'm loving it. I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. But back to your accountability piece, Chris. In order to be successful, that has to be your focus. Do what you've promised, right? Deliver on what you told people you would deliver upon. There's plenty of people out there that, I'll do that for you. Time goes by and it doesn't get done. You got to be a person of your word, and that ultimately to me is being accountable.
I love it. And you shared something that I want to just bring up here for a minute is the concept or the idea of an accountability partner. I've been talking about this for many years, and I think personally I've had 10, 12 accountability partners over the last couple of years, and I think what people miss sometimes is the concept or the idea that an accountability partner is something you have to pay for. You have to subscribe to, you have to commit to financially. And the reality is that's the definition of a coach, whether it's an executive coach, a business coach, a life coach. That is somebody that you pay a specific amount of money to. What an accountability partner is, it's a little bit different. And I think the one thing I will say, obviously being a big fan of accountability partners, is the one word that's far more important than anything else is consistency. So whether you are committing to one or two other people, whether you're doing it on a weekly basis, on a bi-weekly basis, whether it's in person, on the phone, Skype, it's irrelevant what that aspect is, but what is unbelievably important is the consistency perspective. So for our listeners out there, the reality right now is we all have a lot more quote-unquote free time in our hand. And I don't mean free time in the sense that we're sitting around doing nothing, but you're not driving to and from a job. You're not taking a bus or a train to and from a job. You're not flying on business trips. Kids and grandkids aren't going to schools and games and functions. So the reality is, the challenge I pose to everybody today is look at or think about maybe adding an accountability partner to your life. And it can be both business, professional, it can be relationship. Maybe you want to become a better friend, spouse, partner. But I'm really glad that you touched on that.
No, and the fact that it's somebody committing to you as a person, not as a business, speaks volumes for those folks that are assisting you on your journey.
Exactly. I'm glad you just brought that up, because that is very different when You are paying somebody to do something. This is a non-paid an agreement. And the one thing that, in addition to consistency, is it's got to go both ways. It can't be a one-way street.
Right.
So if I'm holding you accountable to X, Y, Z, and we're connecting next week, then the flip side is you're going to have to hold me accountable to these 1 or 2 or 3 things again, and we're going to meet on it, and we're going to discuss it next week. And the reality is, with accountability partners, it's not undefeated. You're not going to do everything perfect and accomplish every single goal exactly the moment you want to. But having that person that checks in on you and cares about you and is not being paid, just I think takes it to a different level.
I agree 100%.
So I'm going to switch lanes here. We're going to jump into what we call our hot seat questions. And the only request we have of you is you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, boy.
All right, you have one last meal, and you can choose absolutely anything. What do you pick?
Pizza.
Favorite sport?
Specifically college basketball.
Favorite smell?
Lavender.
That's not true. Favorite.
Okay, it's really pizza.
All-time favorite sports team?
My University of Dayton Flyers.
Do you have an all-time favorite book?
I do. I gift it quite often, a precious present.
All-time favorite movie?
Field of Dreams.
Favorite singer, group, or rock band?
This is obscure, but I got to stay true to who I am. Guided by Voices.
And if you were stuck in a foxhole, you could only pick one person to have your back. Who do you pick?
The same person who's had my back since the day I was born. My dad. He's been my rock since I was since April of 1970.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And then, so I'm curious to get this question. If I had the opportunity to give you or grant you dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would you pick?
Oh, I knew this question was coming. It has to be my dad's mother. We referred to my grandma as Nanny. Nanny was the positive force in the Wilberding family. She passed away the day after my 11th birthday. And I can still remember her smile, her soft skin, her warm hugs, and little things about her. She used to always have candy circus peanuts for us when we came to visit, which wasn't very often. But you can just visualize, 7 to 11-year-old kid thinking, "Oh, I get to see my nanny, and she's going to have circus peanuts for us." But yeah, I would do anything I could to have an hour with her.
That's awesome. And if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Slow down. You don't have to do everything right now. When I was 20, I thought I had to be a student, a manager of a college basketball team. I had to party. I had to live every day to its fullest. I would tell myself to slow down, enjoy the moment, but not try to do so much every single day.
I think in today's day and age where technology and things just seem to be going faster and faster every single day, I think that's not only good advice for when you were 20, but also great advice for us today. So, Chris, for our listeners that want to follow you or find out more about you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, I've kept it pretty simple for folks. Across social media platforms, I can be found at C. Wilberding, or if you just search my name, Chris Wilberding, at C. Wilberding for Instagram and Twitter. Also follow the hashtag Crispiration, CHRISPIRATION on Instagram. And then I'm also on LinkedIn and Facebook. Would love to connect with anybody that would like to.
Awesome. And then last question for you. I ask every guest if you have some parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners today.
I think I'll channel Vin Scully, the great baseball announcer, for this one, right? So he was the only broadcaster that the Los Angeles Dodgers ever had until just a couple of years ago. But when his quote is fantastic, and this is why I want to leave it with folks. My time on this earth comes to pass. I hope people say that I was a good husband, a good father, and a good man. Anything else they say about me will not matter. Now, obviously, take that for your appropriate gender, but if people can say you're a good partner, a good spouse, a good father, or a good friend, a good man, a good woman, a good person, whatever you've accomplished along the way, that doesn't matter because you've ultimately been true to who you are.
Wow, that is pretty inspirational in many ways. But I think when we come down to the simplicity of what we look for and aim for in life, and I think you said it perfectly, is, fill in your gender, fill in whether you're a husband or wife, regardless what it is, just be the best version of yourself. And I really appreciate the time. And I don't know what quote it is, but I believe people talk about, and you can be the best, if you're the janitor, to be the best janitor in the world, be the best father in the world. So I think it's a perfect way to end today's segue. So Chris, I truly, truly appreciate it. And for our listeners, I would highly recommend you follow Chris on social media if you're looking to get inspired, but more importantly, looking for somebody that is as real as it comes. I appreciate it, Chris, and hope you and I can connect again soon.
I know we will. I appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you for listening to episode number 257. Chris shared some really great stuff with us today, and I hope you took some notes. He touched upon a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset, and I loved how he described the difference. Chris is incredibly active on social media, and he loves to inspire people with his positive perspective on life. As we wrap up today's episode, I have a personal challenge for you. Especially during these difficult times, I challenge each and every one of you to make a conscious and consistent effort to inspire and encourage before you knock someone or bring them down. Be the reason someone smiles and keeps going. And remember, we rise by lifting others up. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.